for some analysis now, we can bring in Nicholas Startin, an associate professor of politics and international relations at John Cabot University in Rome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Emmanuel Macron has had, all summer to kind of think about how he's going to handle the political situation. What do you think he's trying to figure out with these meetings? And do you think his mind is maybe already made up?
It's a good question. He's had a lot of time to think about it. He's had the Olympic truce, as you were calling it in your piece, to kind of work out what his strategy is. I mean, obviously, he would favor some kind of centrist coalition that might include the Republicans and possibly peeling off the right wing of the Socialist Party. The problem is, I think, for Macron is that historically France hasn't really been built around coalitions of the centre. Coalitions have always kind of been of the left and of the right. So, he finds himself in uncharted territory, I would say, in terms of which way to go. He's obviously had what appears to be on the surface a relatively positive meeting this morning with the populist front leaders of the left, and it looks like Lucie Castets has not been ruled out as the possible future prime minister. It'll be interesting to see how his lunchtime discussions go, because I think he has discussions later today where he'll be talking to his broad coalition of the centre, which comprises lots of little different parties. And, he's going to need to get everybody on board with his eyes and thoughts on that. And I guess also, we've got to wait till Monday, I think, before anything concrete probably happens, because he'll also be talking to the Rassemblement National leaders, probably both Le Pen and Bardella, on Monday. So I think his heart would sort of say, look, I really want to build this coalition of the centre, but I can't see how he can really avoid not utilising the Popular Front, given that they are the biggest seat holder in the French National Assembly. They have 193 seats. So at this stage, it's difficult to really predict where it's going to go. But I think give it 24 hours, 48 hours, we're going to know a lot clearer how this looks. And I would suspect a prime minister to be nominated probably on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, as you said, the left-wing bloc is the biggest group. That's their argument. They basically say, Emmanuel Macron, you can't look anywhere else but us, otherwise it's illegitimate. Do you think that that's true, that Macron is ultimately going to go with the left-wing bloc?
Well, I wouldn't want to speculate too much at this stage. I think he would prefer to be trying to peel off the socialists away from the left-wing bloc and potentially the Greens as well. I think he's reticent about a coalition that would include France Insoumise. So, he's really got a difficult 24, 48 hours to work out how this is going to go. I mean, look, at one stage, we were very much talking about Xavier Bertrand as a possible prime minister. But as you pointed out in your piece earlier, the Republicans have only got 63 seats. And even if there was to be some kind of coalition between the Republicans and the centre, they're not necessarily really reflecting the democratic process when, as we've already discussed, the Front de Gauche, or the New Popular Front, as it's now called, got 193 seats. So I wouldn't want to actually wager live on France 24 who's going to become the prime minister. I'm not sure it's really any clearer after today's discussion. But I think one thing we can say is it is possible that Lucie Castets could be the next French prime minister.
And the results of the snap elections were already sort of a slap in the face for Emmanuel Macron. Has waiting this long also weakened his position and the way that people see him in and outside of France?
I'm not sure it has. I think he got a little bit of a bounce in terms of the Olympics. I think that seemed to pass off well, and it gave people a little bit of time to think about what was going on in French political circles. So I actually think probably having this little bit of extra time has been to his advantage. It's kind of negated a little bit some of the radical calls from the right and the left in terms of what's going to happen next. I mean, at one stage, the New Popular Front were talking about a potential impeachment of the president if they didn't go along with his thoughts on who should be with their thoughts on who should be prime minister. But there doesn't seem to have been any of that kind of language this morning. There hasn't been any kind of strong talk from the New Popular Front about things like impeachment. It'll be interesting to see how the Rassemblement National on the right react to this. They're obviously a key player as well. They didn't do as well in the parliamentary elections as they initially thought they would. They've still got a significant rump in the National Assembly, and Macron, I think, will be obliged to talk closely with the leadership of the Rassemblement National as he moves forward with his coalition. But I would doubt that the RM will feature in that. I think what he's looking to do is try to get some kind of coalition which would ensure stability, bearing in mind, the next presidential elections are not until the spring of 2027. So he's got to make this work for the remainder of his second term of office.
Well, I wanted to ask you what the remainder of his term in office, what do you think it's going to look like? I mean, once a prime minister is named, what happens next, and what kind of governing capacity is the next government going to have?
I didn't catch your question there, actually, I'm afraid, because my it wasn't very clear. My end, it lagged out.
Oh,
Could you just repeat the question quickly for me?
yeah, sorry. I was just asking, what the end of Emmanuel Macron's term is going to look like once he does name a prime minister and a new government. What's their governing capacity going to be like?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult, I think, for the president, perhaps less difficult for any government that's in power. But I think there will be issues around, what can we do to get legislation passed? We know that the New Popular Front would very much like to revisit the retirement age with regards to the pensions question. So that has the potential to resurface. And there are other issues, which will be difficult, I think, to regulate with a kind of small majority coalition that's been put together, cobbled together. So I think that the limitations there are there for the government, and also the limitations for the end of the Macron presidency. Suspicion is that he will concentrate primarily on foreign policy. There's a lot going on in the world, and I think he will be looking to kind of reassert himself as a statesman on the world stage, and hoping that at the domestic level, whichever government takes power can kind of keep going until the end of his presidency without great crisis, even if this government does not actually produce massive amounts of legislation moving forward.
All right, Nicholas Startin, thank you again so much for your analysis today. We'll have to leave it there. That's Nicholas Startin, an associate professor of politics and international relations at John Cabot University in Rome.